Okay, last night was very ugly, but not as ugly as an anonymous Eagles player calling out the Birds' play calling versus the Cowboys following the game. Hear why one Cowboy thinks the Birds' defense quit on Sean Desai in the second half, and you gotta listen to Nick Sirianni promise to fix the Eagles' coaching issues this week, plus everything else from an embarrassing loss to the Dallas Cowboys. I'm Thomas Mott. This is the Thomas Mott Show. You know what's worse than a Sunday Night Football loss to the Dallas Cowboys where you not only lose the NFC East lead, but look horrible with fumbles and drops and poor coaching and bad play design and horrible defense? How about paying money to be at the game with your mother, Josh Davis, and yes, my Cowboy-loving friend Matt? Yeah, I was there yesterday, and trust me, it was much worse in person at Jury World than just simply watching it at home on your TV. Although for those wondering, this wasn't me outside the NovaCare complex this morning with a fire Sean Desai sign and 2 trash cans saying no play Slay and James Bradbury. I had a 6 a.m. flight out of Dallas to get back to Atlanta, and so while I thought about going to the NovaCare complex, no, I can confirm it definitely wasn't me. Now, heading into Sunday night, I don't know why, but after that 49er loss last week, I kind of had a lot of confidence that this team would show up after getting embarrassed by Brock Purdy and really show off some pride and toughness on national television. I mean, A.J. Brown told us earlier in the week that things would be different on Sunday night, right?
I'm going to keep what was said in the locker room, but you're going to see. You're going to see Sunday.
I guess if by different, he really meant exactly the same, if not worse, then yeah, he was dead on. And honestly, besides being there with my Eagle-loving mother, the best part of the game was probably seeing Sean Desai warming up on the sideline, and how about Big Dom welcoming the team onto the field without actually getting onto the field because of that stupid one-game suspension from last week. Honestly, after that, once the game started, it went downhill from there. I mean, per usual, the Eagle defense got worked on the opening drive with Dallas running the ball right down the Eagles' throats and converting some key third downs. A few plays later, inside the Eagle red zone, Ceedee Lamb was wide open on 3rd down and 2, and the boys, just like that, jumped out to a very early lead. Third down defense has been so incredibly bad this year. It just keeps getting worse and worse. And right now, Philadelphia is giving up 61% of all third down conversions over the past 3 games. That's horrific. And to make matters worse, the Eagles offense, they did look solid for the first few plays, marched right into Cowboy territory. Then the first of many disasters would strike as Jalen Hurts would fumble the football here, following, again, a great drive and give the Eagles their first drive-killing turnover. Now listen, Jalen Hurts wasn't terrible last night, but let's be honest, this was his 15th turnover of the season, which is about 11 turnovers too many if you ask me. Now I'm going to blame coaching a ton throughout the course of this show, and rightfully so, but it's not Brian Johnson's fault the Eagles are fumbling the football, right? Now following the fumble, the Cowboys would again march right down the field, albeit with some help from the NFL referees, who had another terrible game last night. And although I'm not going to complain about them after this, is this pass interference right here? Are we really going to call this pass interference on Darius Slay? I mean, come on, this is terrible, but is it as bad as Darius Slay immediately going to his Twitter account seconds after the game ended and complaining about this call, despite the fact his secondary got worked and lost by 20? Come on, Slay, you're a leader. You don't need to go on your podcast and explain why you actually played pretty well. It wasn't really your fault. You guys played terrible on defense. Own up to it. Don't go to Twitter or your podcast and act like you didn't have anything to do with this. Now, you get a little bit of credit because they did force a field goal on that drive, but just like that, Philadelphia was down yet again double digits for the 5th straight game in a row. And the Eagles offense would go 3 and out. But then how about Michael Clay dialing up maybe the best offensive play for the Eagles all night long? A fake punt, and it actually worked. I love the call, but also did not tell you that the Eagles offense and really the Eagles defense had absolutely no faith in themselves, that they were going for it this early on with a bunch of gadget plays, just praying that Dak Prescott wouldn't get the ball again? I mean, come on, if you're running fake punts this early in a football game, you're basically telling the other team that your defense is not going to be able to stop them. Now, Jalen would march down the field again and then throw a perfect pass to A.J. Brown, but he would drop it and the Birds would settle for a Jake Elliott field goal. Honestly, another rough game for A.J. Brown. And what makes matters worse is Stephon Gilmore apparently took being called old by Brown earlier on in the game to heart and absolutely balled out the rest of the way. And you can see A.J. Brown was visibly frustrated all night long and really didn't have a great game. And Dak would come back out firing, including this deep ball to Jake Ferguson, which knocked Reed Blankenship out with a concussion. And a few plays later, the Cowboys would punch it in right through the Eagles' defensive line to go up 17-3. And honestly, the Eagles' defensive line has been non-existent the past couple of weeks. And I know they've gotten some sacks here and there, but this defensive line is completely different than it was last year, and they're just mediocre. They're just average. When you send 4-man pressures, this front cannot get to anybody, especially Dak Prescott last night. And the whole point of this defense is to get pressure with 4, play soft zone coverage, force interceptions, and force throws in front of the sticks. And the problem is, if you get 0 pressure and you don't make any sort of blitzing adjustments, like Sean Desai does not in the first half, you see what happened last night, and Dak, Ceedee Lamb, and everybody else in the NFL is going to absolutely shred you. And like me, Josh Sweat seemed very tired of the defensive line's struggle to get to the quarterback post-game when he said, quote, "I'm tired of effing almost. We're too good of a rush to be getting too many almost. Too many quarterback hits, too many pressures. We need to get home. We've seen we can be dominant. We can change games," except for the fact that they haven't been able to change games the past couple of weeks. And I'm going to rip into the secondary as bad as it was last night, but if the front 4 could get home just a little bit more than they are right now, it'd probably make the secondary's life just a little bit easier. The defense as a whole is extremely soft. They lack any sort of toughness, and I mean, listen to DeMarcus Lawrence call out the Eagles defense for basically quitting last night.
The motherfucker in the face over and over and over and over again until they quit. And when they quit, hit them again. And again, and again, and again.
Now, Hurts would come alive a little bit on the following drive, connecting with A.J. Brown on this nice back shoulder pass. But then look at Micah Parsons here. I just ripped the Eagles' defensive line, but has the offensive line been much better? They can't stop blitzes to save their lives, and the Eagles' offense would stall yet again and force another field goal. Things kept getting worse because on the following Cowboy drive, for some astronomical reason, the Eagles decided to throw Kelee Ringo into the game on 3rd down and 6, where he immediately not only allowed a catch, but drew a pass interference and a face mask, both of which would count and tack on 15 yards. Now, I know we all want to see more of Kelee Ringo, but my goodness, why are you bringing him in on a random 3rd down and 6 for his first real snaps at cornerback in a game that's this big in a high-pressure moment he clearly wasn't ready to play? And Dak would capitalize and score on this easy pass to Michael Gallup, and they'd head into halftime up 24-6 on Philadelphia. And with the Eagles facing another big halftime deficit, Jason Kelce said Nick Sirianni tried very hard to motivate the team in a fiery halftime speech.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, he's pissed off at halftime. He was fired up, trying to rally the troops, and just not a 2 really poor performances. But I think Nick feels the same way that we all do, and that we can play much better than we're playing right now, and we're going to go back to back to working on it this week.
Now, if you're like me and thought a fiery halftime speech might motivate Philadelphia, you would think wrong, as A.J. Brown immediately decided to fumble the football on his own, and the Eagles suddenly had their second big turnover, and it just kept getting worse. I mean, how many times are we going to turn the football over in key situations? It feels like in these games where we get behind, they just turn the ball over and give the defense even more time out on the football field, and they can't get stops, and it just spirals into an absolute disaster. Now, Nick Sirianni, for his credit, did take the blame for the fact that, yes, the Eagles are turning the ball over, but they're also not scoring early on in games, and it seems to be somewhat of a coaching issue.
Yeah, again, they've done a nice job attacking us. We got to start faster. We got to start faster with our plan as coaches. First of all, put them in the right spots, and then we got to execute. So it's been both. I don't think when you've been down like we have in the first half, it's never just, hey, it's all this, right? If we knew it was all this, then we'd do everything we could do to fix it. But again, in the beginning stages, we're not coaching well enough, we're not playing well enough, and that's my job as the head coach to make sure that we start fast. So I'm not doing a good enough job for us starting fast. We've played way more from behind, and we have to figure that out.
Now, Desai would finally force a punt in the third quarter. Then the Eagles would fail on 3rd down and short, give the ball right back to Dak. And at this point, I was pretty darn sure we were about to get blown out. Fletcher Cox, to his credit, however, decided to keep the game somewhat interesting by stripping Dak Prescott, and then how about the rookie picking it up for the Eagles and scoring their only touchdown of the night, which happened to be on defense. I guess this was the best little stretch of Desai's evening as they forced the turnover, then they forced a punt immediately by Dak Prescott, but then the following Eagles drive, they go right into Cowboy territory, and then Brian Johnson dialed up this beautiful 3-yard route on 4th down and 9, and they turn the ball over yet again. This was the nail in the coffin for me on Brian Johnson. I know a lot of you guys have been out on Brian Johnson for the past couple of weeks. I keep waiting for him to kind of figure it out, but we're 14, 15 weeks in the NFL season? If you're calling these sort of plays on 4th down and 9, you deserve to no longer be calling plays for the Eagles. I mean, look at this NFL next-gen route tree for A.J. Brown all night. It's literally go routes and out routes. Very few crossing routes and very few creativity. This is horrific play design, and it starts with Brian Johnson and also Nick Sirianni. Oh, and it would get worse. Listen to what an anonymous player told Derek Gunn of Jakib Media right after the game last night.
I've been going back and forth with a couple of players in the locker room, and I'm like, what the heck is going on? First response I got back was, we are very predictable. I said, predictable? I said, explain. Look at our pass routes compared to the Cowboys' pass routes. Our pass routes take too long to develop. Dallas gets their bleep out real quick.
Yikes. Predictable. It's like the one thing you can't be in this league. This is where Sirianni and Johnson need to swallow their pride, change things up, and fix this offense. The calls aren't working. This offense is not working. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again with the hopes of a different outcome. And I think it's finally time for Sirianni to take back over play calling and prove it's been Johnson's problem and Johnson's fault, or else the blame should go no further than the offensive-minded head coach himself. Still, though, as I said earlier, you can only scheme up so many plays if your team keeps turning the football over. And here's a great example. DeVonta Smith, nice catch, run after the catch, and then, oh, what do you know? The third fumble of the night. 3 of them all by your best players? Absolutely killers. Now, one garbage time Cowboy field goal would make the final score 33-13, and after the game, QB1 for the Cowboys, he ripped into Desai's defense saying, if I play my best game, we're putting a 50 up there. Although I guess for what it's worth, whether you like hearing this or not, some Eagle veteran players after the game, they seem kind of confident being able to turn things around over the final 4-game stretch of the season.
They're great, got great leaders in here that's going to lead the guys in the right direction. It's only the third loss. We got 4 left. Got to go out here and capitalize on these 4 and get a push going because, it's just, everybody always say we got time. We got time. But 4 games left, the time's shrinking.
I don't hate that from Darius Slay, and I don't necessarily hate this from Jalen Hurts, who was asked about moving forward after this bad loss.
This is something we're going through, not necessarily stuck in, and that's something that I believe in. We have to be able to learn from it, and we will. It's an eagerness to just continue to press on.
But they keep saying this. They keep saying that we make mistakes. We need to fix them. We need to do better. We need to coach better. We need to call plays better. We need to execute better. But when are you actually going to do these things? There are only so many games left in the season. This isn't week 4. It's week 14. You have 4 games left. You've got to turn things around, and I'm starting to lose faith that they're going to be able to. There are a lot of things wrong here, and I'm going to read the comments and see where you guys are at, but it goes many different ways, right? The offense lacks creativity, it lacks execution, and it lacks the ability to pass block and really run the football for, the past 5 weeks? And while I think Brian Johnson has done a terrible job, it takes Sirianni taking over and taking the play calling back for us to really know who's to blame in terms of it being Hurts, the offensive line, Johnson's play calling, or in the end, your offensive-minded head coach, Nick Sirianni. Take the play calling back and let us see exactly what's going on. Then defensively, Sean Desai, he gets too set in his ways early on, he takes too long to make adjustments, and by the time it gets to the third quarter, Philadelphia's already down by 3-4 scores, and there's no way the defense can get enough stops to make the game actually, close. Plus, Slay and Bradbury are shells of themselves, even though the stats would say they're playing a little bit better than we give them credit for. Kevin Byard doesn't look like he was ever actually an all-pro since being traded to Philadelphia, and your defensive line never gets pressure on the good quarterbacks. I'm wondering if the Birds can right the ship. Now, we have 10 wins. If you're sitting here today and completely abandoning all hope and saying you're never going to watch an Eagles game, you're wrong, because they have a pretty easy schedule to finish up here, and they control their own destiny. You win out, you for sure win the NFC East, and you probably have a good chance of being the 1, if not worse, the 2 seed. But Philadelphia has to make some serious changes this week. I cannot just sit here all week long and show you guys press conference clips where they say, we're going to be better. We promise to be better. Just wait and see. It's going to be fixed. And then nothing happens. We need them to come out tomorrow on all of their press conferences and say, here are the actual changes. We're changing this up. We're changing up the play calling. We're changing up our defensive scheme. We're changing up maybe some player position groups. I don't know, but you've got to make actual changes, because if this same team shows up on Monday night versus the Seattle Seahawks and lays another egg, the remaining fans who have not fully abandoned ship will do so, and there'll be a lot more people lining up outside the NovaCare complex than just one person saying fire Sean Desai. I got plenty more coverage happening the next couple of days and weeks. Be sure to subscribe as we get closer to 32,000 subs today as we keep marching on here. Win, lose, or draw, we will cover the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm still holding out hope they can figure it out, but last night was one of the more ugly games I've seen, and it was much worse being the fact that I had to pay money to actually be there. I'm Thomas Mott. This has been The Thomas Mott Show.